L'kuta Sicha is Chelek Chaf, the Sicha of Chaye Sara Beis, Lili Nishmis Rabbi Yosef ben Yamin ben Rabbi Nasha Kaltman. We are also learning L'schus, our dear friend Yosef Shlema ben Risha, for Refuah Shlema Ukreva. We are going to explore the various different levels of Teshuva as they are expressed in a statement in the Zohar, as explained by the Rabbi's father, Harav Reb Levi Yitzchak. In Zohar Parsha Seinu is Mavur, Eina from the Mailis and Bali Teshuva of Tzadikim Gmurim. The Zohar of this week's Parsha explains one of the advantages of the Bali Teshuva, those who return to Hashem over Tzadikim Gmurim. Tzadikim Gmurim is the Aved Ba'aliyah B'Seder V'Adragam Yom L'Yom. By a Tzadik, the Avodah is in an organized, in a sequential manner, going from level to level, from day to day. Midarga ledarga, from level to level, from step to step. V'yishteit b'parsha seinu, as it says, V'Avram zakin bo bayomim. Avram had become old. He came in his days, which means he grew closer and closer to Hashem as the days went on. Similarly, in the Haftarah of this week's parsha, it says, David zakin bo bayomim. David HaMelech became old. He came in his days, implying that he came closer and closer to Hashem as the days went on. Until they reached through their avodah to the ultimate closeness and connection with Hashem. Whereas the Bali Teshuva, unlike the tzaddik that works in a organized and sequential manner, is b'shaita chada, b'yoyim chada, b'rega chada, in 1 hour, in 1 day, in 1 moment, kreiven the gabe kutchebrichu, become close to Hashem. That's what the Zohar says, that the way it works for a Bal Teshuva is that it happens very quickly. Doesn't have to take the time that it normally takes for a tzaddik to do his regular avodah. Stellt sich auf dem der Tate in seine Ha'aris, so the Rebbe's father, Rabbi Levi Yitzchak, asks on the Zohar, in the Rebbe's father's Ha'aris on Zohar, the order of hour, day, and minute or moment is not in the right order. I should have said first a day, then an hour, then an instant. Each one is a greater chiddush. Not just this, but even this. You could say a Bal Teshuva can come close to Hashem in a day, unlike the tzaddik that takes years and years. Or not a day, can even do it in an hour. He can even do it in an instant. But to say this order, first he says hour, then day, then instant, seems to be out of order. Gam, additionally, im dai berega chada, if 1 instant is enough, why even mention day and hour? Besides the question that if you're going to mention all three, at least mention them in an order. Once you say that about Teshuva can do Teshuva, can become close to Hashem in 1 instant, then certainly he can do it in an hour and a day. Why even mention those two? Unis mivayr. So the Rebbe's father explains. There are 3 levels in Teshuva. One reaches Malchus, which means that a Yid through doing Teshuva could reach the level of Malchus in Elokus. Another Teshuva reaches Zah. Another Teshuva reaches Bina. And the Rebbe's father references a mimer from the Alter Rebbe L'Kutatera Matevu, where he explains the 3 dargis of Teshuva and the levels that one can reach through them. And the Rebbe mentions it briefly in the brackets. As it says, one level of Teshuva is to stay away, to refrain from doing bad. This level of Teshuva brings the person to reach the level of Malchus. There's a higher level of Teshuva, which is through doing good, not just refraining from doing bad, but doing good. This level of Teshuva reaches Zah. There is a higher level of Teshuva, which is the idea of Bakishalim, which is the learning of Torah. And it reaches Bina. And that's why in the Zohar it's written in this order, because the lowest level of Teshuva reaches Malchus, which is Shaita. The second level of Teshuva reaches Zah, which is Yoima. And the third level of Teshuva reaches Bina, which is Rega. Now at this point, Shaita, Yoima, and Rega are actually levels in Teshuva, and we would understand, don't necessarily mean an hour, a day, and a minute, and an instant. It's really just a level of Teshuva. In Sif Beis, the Rebbe is going to say it can't be. If we're calling it Shaita, and we're calling it Yoima, and we're calling it Rega, it must mean that somehow this level, Malchus, Zoh, and Bina, relates in some way to a time frame. Beautiful Taten wird mit die drei Scheines Bescheite bei jemand Beraga beiker gemeint. At first glance, it seems that the Rebbe's father is explaining that these three expressions, Shaita, Yema, and Rega, are not indicating a time frame, nor the drei Madreges and Teshuva. Rather, they're indicating three levels of Teshuva. These are merumas in Shaita, Malchus, Yema, Za, and Rega Bina. The Teshuva itself is Surmera, Aseitev, and Baki Shalim. But they are alluded to in Shaita, which means Malchus, in Yema, which means Za, and Bina, and Rega, which means Bina. Und der Vater is Rech, was stehen in Zeh mit dem Seder, and that's why the Zohar writes them in this order. Weil das ist the Fi Seder Madreges Milmata Lamaila, because it's going from the lowest to the highest level. Malchus, Za, Bina. To learn, but it's not so simple to learn it this way. It's hard to remove the simple meaning of the words from those words. And therefore we must accept as the drei Teshuvas are now. These three levels of Teshuva, which reach respectively Malchus, Za, and Bina, is jeder von sie verbunden mit dem bestimmten Zman kipshutei, must have some connection to this specific time frame. The Teshuva von Surmera was Magia b'Malchus tut sich auf B'shai Techada. That the Teshuva of Surmera, which as we said reaches the level of Malchus, can be accomplished in 1 hour. The next level up, which is Asay Tov through doing positive things, which reaches the level of Zah in the Mizman von Yom Echada, that can be accomplished in the course of a day. Und die höchste Darge, Baki Shalom Teira, and the highest Darge of Teshuva, which is Baki Shalom, which we said before is through learning Teira, versus Magia Bebina, which reaches the level of Bina, a Regechada can be accomplished in an instant. It must be that it's not just the name of a level, an indication to a specific Darge level that one is reaching, but the fact that Malchus is called Teshuva, that's reaching Malchus is called Shaita, is because it can be done in 1 hour, and so on. Davon verstehen, and therefore we have to now understand this. So now what we have is 3 levels of Teshuva. 3 levels of Teshuva, which is Surmera, Asay Tov, and Baki Shalim. They reach 3 separate levels, Malchus, Za, and Bina, and they can be accomplished respectively in an hour, in a day, and in an instant. Davon verstehen. So now we have to understand. Das was about Teshuva is miyad oal v'yizdavek b'kutshevrichu. The fact that about Teshuva could immediately rise up and connect to Hashem is weil die Tnuah von Teshuva is be'etzem tchunas ha'echer v'snei v'adraga. Because the whole concept of Teshuva is by definition something that is not limited to an orderly or an organized system. Zayin dik frier in a matzav lo yitev, starting out in a non-good situation, in a no-good situation, and then Teshuva, he leaps into an entirely different space from one extreme to another extreme. From a matzav hafchi, from a situation where he was contrary to living a life of Torah mitzvahs, to kiyum Torah mitzvahs, to fulfilling Torah mitzvahs, and cleaving to Hashem. So the whole concept of Teshuva by definition is a leap, where you're going from one state to another state, from one space to another space. So in order to do this, you have to reach into the person has to reach into themselves, into a part of themselves that doesn't need to operate in an organized manner. He has to go to a part of his soul that transcends orderliness. Not orderliness, but seder, to do it in an organized way. The riber is das nicht verbunden mit Masechsman, and therefore we're not just like in the person's soul. It's coming from a place that is not in an organized way. So too also the time frame, it cannot be said that it's taking a specific amount of time. Nor miyad o alvizdabek v'chulu. But immediately when the person makes that transition, he goes straight from a place where he was into a space of tshuva and closeness to Hashem. So the concept of tshuva is by definition one that is not built on an organized system, and therefore time-wise it can happen instantaneously. Lefiza ist aber nicht verstandig. So in this case, it's hard to understand. Wie kommt es, als die hechere Darge von Teshuva, was sei toiv, was kommt durch Hatifere, sei des Teshuva, soll sein verbunden mit der Hemshech Bisman? So then why is the sei toiv, which is higher than Sur Meira, taking an additional amount of time? So let's understand this for a second. Let's make sure we understand the details here. The highest level of tshuva is being done in a rega, in an instant. That makes perfect sense at this point. Because since tshuva is berega, so if you do tshuva properly on the highest level, it takes a rega. But now, when you're looking at the other two, Sur Meira and Asay Toiv, Sur Meira is being done in an hour, and Asay Toiv is being done in a day. Since Asay Toiv is a higher level of tshuva, why does it take longer time? The whole concept of tshuva is instantaneous. So say if you're not doing the highest level of tshuva, it takes a little bit longer. But so therefore you need an hour. But why would Asay Toiv, which is higher than Sur Meira, take more time, further away from Rega, further away from the instantaneousness, if that's a word, of the tshuva? Al-Derech says, the same question could be asked with regards to the spheres of Malchus, Zah, and Bina. It says, Yodua, as alle inyonim svelim hazeh, v'renimshech v'nishtalshel, u'b'meila zanen ze bedugma von der Elam Shalamayla. We know that everything that happens in this world originate from what's happening in the spiritual worlds, and therefore they emulate the spiritual worlds. Noch mehr, die Kavane von the Tachlis von the Elam Yenim is Elam Hazatachten. Not only are the lower worlds emulating and stemming from the higher worlds, but actually the whole purpose of the higher worlds is for the lower worlds. Is wie stimmt es? So that's the case. If what happens down below has to be consistent with what's going on above because they're connected to each other, how does it fit? Was die hechere Madrege so wird angerufen Yoima und die niedrige Darge Malchus Shaita. Why is it that the higher level is being referred, which is Zah, is being referred to as Yoima, as day, which is a longer amount of time, and the lower level Malchus is being called Shaita. But as Yoima is a longer shears man, when Yoima, a day, is actually a longer amount of time. So it's deeper immersed into a world of time. And further from higher than time. In other words, what happens is the world, the physical world, is made up of time and space. So the deeper you go into the world, the more time, the more immersed you're going to be in time. So if Zah is higher than Malchus, then really Zah should take less time than Malchus. Zah should be connected with a smaller time frame than Malchus, because the higher you are, the closer you are to transcend time. The lower you are, the deeper you are in time. So besides asking the question, why in Teshuva, if Teshuva is Berega Chada, why does Asay Toiv take longer than Sur Meira if it's a higher level? In the Sfiris itself, it should work that, let's say, Bina is a Rega, that makes sense, because Bina is as you're just getting into the world of time. But then, Zah, which is higher than Malchus, should be hour, and Malchus, which is lower, should be day, not the other way around. So our question is, once we've established that Teshuva is Berega Chada, number one, why is the Asay Toiv level longer than the Sur Meira? And why is Zah connected with a longer time frame than Malchus? Gimel. In the Ksiv Gimel, the Rebbe is going to introduce a very interesting discussion that will shed light on this this question that the Rebbe has. The question is going to be, when you say something briefly, bekitzer, or something else is done ba'arichis, more elaborately, which of the two is a higher level? When you do it concisely and briefly, or when you do it elaborately? When discussing a intellectual matter, and you were discussing whether it would be done more briefly, more concisely, or more at length. Wer von sie is hecher? Which of these two is a higher level? The brief version or the elaborate version? And we find two approaches to this. Kitzer hatten sich hayis in the gabi arichas. On the one hand, we find that Kitzer has the short version has an advantage to the elaborate version. As the Rambam writes with regards to the Mishnah, the Mishnah was written in a way that it's written very short and it contains many details. Whereas the Gemara is written much more elaborately than the Mishnah. Similarly, the later commentaries, in comparison to the earlier commentaries, they explain more. They write it more at length, which means that the Mishnah, which can contain a lot in a very short amount of words, or the Rishonim that contain a lot more information in a smaller amount of words, is actually a higher level. The shortness or the brevity of it is actually showing that it's higher. And to say the same thing but from a different perspective, when the concept is in its source, in the mind of the person, it's there very shortly. You understand the idea. And you only have to elaborate when you have to now convey it to the recipient, to the student. Then you have to now bring it down to the next person by saying many more words than the way it is in your actual mind. For Mishnah and Gemara, whether you're going from the teacher to the student, whether you're going from Mishnah to Gemara, or from Gemara to Lemdim and Machamish Laches, or from the Gemara to those who learned and wrote Sfarim after that. Again, every time you wanted to go lower, you had to speak it out more, implying that Kitzer is an advantage over Arichas. That's one perspective. On the other hand, that you should always teach your student in short form. Is why? The Talmud, the student, cannot ingest the whole length and breadth of this topic. Therefore, you should convey to the student a summary. As can fit to his the ability of his comprehension. To say says the kids is in this perspective, because the student is lower than the teacher, therefore you're going shorter. So in the first approach, we said that you have in the person's mind, you have an idea, and the idea is fully developed in a very short form, and then as you have to lower it to the next level, you have to elaborate more and more in order to be for the recipient to receive this information. On the other hand, you say that sometimes if you give the entire thought to the recipient, it'll be too lofty, too high for them, and therefore you give them a short version, because the lower you go, the shorter it has to be. So now you're looking at the same question with two totally different approaches. The first approach is that Kitzer is higher than Arichis. In the second approach, Kitzer is lower than Arichis. The simpler the student, the less you give. So which one is it? So in Sif Dalet, the Rebbe is going to give the answer. It really depends which level you're discussing. If Kitzer is an advantage or Kitzer is a disadvantage, is going to depend from which level you're discussing. When you're discussing two separate worlds, like for example, a teacher and a student, different levels in understanding this concept. Which one level is higher than the other or much higher than the other. For example, the difference between the sages of the Mishnah and the sages of the Gemara. Gemara and Rishonim and each different examples of two worlds where you're let's say learning Gemara, or you're learning the commentaries on the Gemara. So when you're in two different worlds, then the higher the seichel, altsmer bekitzer, the more brief it's going to be. Is was the seichel gefindt sich, altsmer bekitzer is the reif mit der steht dort, and it will be written in a much shorter manner. Weil dort is the etzem svara begilui. Mized gleich dem emes, because on the higher level, the core of the concept is revealed, you can immediately see the truth. And then as you have to bring it down lower and lower, so now you need the same concept has to be more explained and more elaborated upon. Rabbi brings a very beautiful example of the comparison of seeing and hearing. Something that through your eyes you could see in an instant, in the blink of an eye, will take a significant amount of time to if you're going to internalize it through hearing about it. So if a person looks up and sees the trees, he could see a million details in 1 second. Then he wants to convey there were 16 trees, and one was tall, and one was short, and this one had leaves, and this one had this color leaves, and that color leaves. And there's so many details of information that you have to give over if it's not, you're not actually seeing it. So the higher level of seichel, the seichel is you're seeing the essence of this of the core concept. So you're seeing it in an instant. So therefore there's no need to be meirich. Then when you want to convey it down to the next world, you have to elaborate to be able to take so many details and include them in what you're saying. So that's when you have two separate worlds. In the higher world, the thing is like in a state of vision, and in the lower world, it's like hearing about it, which takes much more time. But if you're going to talk within the same world, is heipech advarim, then the opposite is true. The greater, the deeper the concept, the more length it needs, the more elaboration it needs in order to truly appreciate and comprehend the idea. And if something that's simple, then it could be said over in much less time. Because since it's such a simple idea, less explanation is necessary. So when you're going from two different worlds, where in one world it's the world, let's say, of vision, and the other world is the world of hearing. So in the higher world, you could see it so clearly, you don't need to say much. And in the lower world, you need to elaborate in order to speak, in order to understand. But when you're talking about within the same world, then you're within the world of Mishnah, within the world of Gemara, within the world of the Rav, or within the world of the Talmud, in order, the deeper something is, the more words it needs. And the more words it has, the more words you use, the deeper you can go with it. So that answers our question, is Kitzer greater or is Arichas greater? Kitzer is greater when you're going from world to world. Arichas is greater within the same world. And the same thing would apply in the examples mentioned above. In the Madregen Welt von Mishnah Lagabe Gemara, werden die Svaras am Lukas Haris gebracht, the Kitzer Berach HaGemara. In the worlds where you're comparing the world of Mishnah to the world of Gemara, then the heavier ideas are in the Mishnah are much shorter than they are in the Gemara. But if you're going to go into the Gemara itself, or something similar to that, the Rav and Talmud, then the deeper ideas are going to be more elaborate, and the simpler ideas will be more concise. Now let's apply this concept to the levels of Teshuva. Although we said that there's 3 levels of Teshuva, but in a more general perspective, we could divide these 3 into 2 categories. The first 2, Sur Meira and Asay Tov, are the lower level of Teshuva. The Dritte Darge, Baki Shalom, which is Limud HaTorah, Teshuva Ilah is the higher level of Teshuva. And it's also on a simple level. The Teshuva Sur Meira and Asay Tov and Embede in Elam HaMaisa. Asur Meira and Asay Tov are both related to the world of action. Asiya or Shlilas Asiya. One is about doing things and one is about not doing things, but it's both related to the world of action. The Dritte Teshuva Baki Shalom is Limud HaTorah in Elam HaMaisa. And the third level is not in the world of action, it's in the world of intellect, which is learning Torah. Underriber. So now we have two separate worlds. You have the Olam HaMaisa and you have Olam HaMoichin. The Teshuva was the Shaykh zu Moichin is bekitzer Yeser berege Chade. Well in the Mecher in Elam HaSeichel stehen in Yana Begolo Yeser der Riber darf in Ankommen zu Arichis. So when we say that the Teshuva through the highest level of Teshuva is done berege Chade in one instant, that is because in the higher world in comparison to the lower world, we say that the higher it is, the more bekitzer it is. And therefore, since tshuva is on such a high level, it can be done in an instant. As we said before, the light is shining, so you see it all in front of your face, and therefore in 1 second, you can get it done. But now when you go down into the world of Maisa, over there is the opposite. The shorter is not better. The tshuva from Vasei Tov is these ahechere darge nemt allein in meshech zman yom echad. The higher level of tshuva Vasei Tov takes more time. It's just like the deeper concepts in Gemara that you need more time to learn them. Whereas the lower level, which is Sur Meira, it takes less time. It takes only an hour. Just like the simple ideas in Gemara, that all you need is a short explanation. And it's interesting to note, as Azoyis does euch bepashtus, this also works out in a very practical level as well. As if ton vas say a to do something takes time. To not do something takes a second. Say I'm not doing this, I'm not doing it. End of story. But to say I'm going to do it, then whatever it is, it takes time. So also practically, Sur Meira takes less time than Asay Tov. So this is why. In when it comes to tshuva, the tshuva on the level of Sur Meira takes less time because it's a more basic level of tshuva, and tshuva Asay Tov, which is a deeper level of tshuva, takes more time because within the world of Maisa, longer is better. And the same thing applies in the Sfiris above. The Sfiris have been which is in the world of Moichin, which is higher than the world, then it's called instant. Because the godly light is shining there very clearly, in a very revealed way. So therefore, it takes an instant a rega. But the spheres of Zay Malchus, which are related to the world of Midos, in both of them there is some level of time, whether it's a day or an hour, but it can't be done in a rega because in Olam Hamidos, which is a more physical world, it needs time. You can't do it in a second. It's not about. It's like hearing versus seeing. But since within the world of Elam Amidus, Zah is higher than Malchus, therefore Zah is called Yema because within one world, the higher you go, the more time it takes, and therefore Zah is called Yema, day, and Malchus Shaita, hour. And with this, the Rebbe answered our question. In Sivav, the Rebbe is going to conclude by saying that according to this, we can understand another girsa that has another expression of time, not just shaita, yoima, and rega, but zimna. Leighton bid and alfan taten, according to this explanation of the Rebbe's father, as the drei lishenis and zayars and merames, as the drei dagas now shuvah, these three expressions, shaita, yoima, and rega, are related to the three levels of tshuva, sur merah, say tev, and bakishalim, or malchus, zay, and bina. We can explain, according to Chassidus, the girsa of the Ramak, as in the Maimer HaZoyar, that in this teaching of the Zoyar, there are actually four expressions. That a person, a Baal Tshuva, could do Tshuva b'shayta chada, b'yoyma chada, b'zimna chada, b'riga chada. In 1 hour, in 1 day, in one time frame, in one instant. The Kutatera is Mavor, Dart is Mavor. The Kutatera, which we mentioned earlier, in the Maimer that the Rebbe's father referenced, is zijn dat drei dages in tshuva. As agam b'cholos zijn dat drei dages in tshuva. Even though in general there are three levels of tshuva, but more going into more detail, more specifically, there's a fourth higher level. Was is magia and sfiris achachma ubavede das der inyan von kadesh atzmach abamutulach. We said Malchus Zah Bina. There's a higher level of tshuva that reaches Chachma, and in the Avodah there was Sur Meira, there was Asay Tov, there was Bakishalim, and the fourth level is Kadesh Atzmach Habamutalach, when one sanctifies themselves by refraining from things that are permissible. So according to this beer of the Rebbe's father, we can explain, as the ferte darge is merumos in the ferten loschen was kommt zu in zeir legisaramak bezim nechada, that this fourth level of tshuva that is reaching chachma could be alluded to in the time frame that is mentioned in the Zohar according to the Ramak zim nechada. Hagamas rega is the chelek that cleansed the chelek in zman. Even though rega, an instant, is the smallest time frame, the smallest particle of time that we know, is a refer dadi shailu tshuva the kama rega. But there's actually a discussion in the Gemara: how long is an instant? How long is a rega? Echad mechameshes chulu rega kememra aruis leiden drayosius. It's not like this is shir. The Gemara discusses: is it the time it says to say is it the time it takes to say the word rega? Is it the time it takes to say three letters? But it does have a definition. How much time is rega? Zimna is nit magder kein shum shir's man. Zimna means time. It doesn't mean which part of time. It's as if it expresses time without defining how much time it is. So it's even higher than rega. It's timelessness within time. And according to what the Alter Rebbe says in Likutei Torah, as Afal became that that usually we only discuss three levels of tshuva. Because chachma bina are literally means two friends that don't separate. Chachma needs bina, bina needs chachma. They always go together. So therefore, it doesn't have to specify the fourth level, because the fourth level is included in the third. If you have bina, it's because chachma came right before it. But the eich sein move on. So that's why most girsois don't mention the fourth level. That's why the Ramak is one version, but the more common version is just Shai Techada Rigechada, Shai Techada B'Yemechada B'Rigechada, and not B'Zim Nechada, because in general we speak about three levels of tshuva, the fourth being included in the third. But since sometimes we do mention this fourth level, therefore there is a version, the version of the Ramak, that mentions the fourth level of tshuva, which is the ultimate tshuva, the tshuva that reaches chachma. But that is just an anomaly. In other words, that is something that is mentioned just to know that it exists. But normally we talk about three levels of tshuva. Therefore, normally the common girsa in the Zohar is the three dargis of Shaita, Yoma, and Riga. And the idea is that with tshuva, a person does not have to go baba yamim, doesn't have to go in an organized way, but it's a kfitza, it's a leap from the previous situation to a situation of tshuva. Just how quick that leap is depends on how deep the tshuva is. If it's tshuva of sur merah, or if it's tshuva of asetev, or if it's tshuva of baki shalom through Torah, which is on a much, much higher level, it can be done mamish b'riga chada.